Ever wonder how you check every box and still feel empty inside? Welcome to Rewiring Health, the space for the woman who holds it all together on the outside while quietly losing pieces of herself on the inside. The woman who fawns to keep the peace, overachieves to feel worthy, and sacrifices her needs to avoid disappointing anyone. Here, you will learn a new way. Each episode will help you understand your nervous system, break the patterns that drain you, and rebuild a life rooted in self-respect, calm confidence, and genuine inner peace. I'm Kelly Kessler, and this is your homecoming. Let's dive in. What if the thing you're trying to outrun is actually the doorway? Today's conversation is not about fixing yourself. It's about understanding that maybe you were never broken, just carrying stories that never had a chance to dissolve. Richard Grossman has spent over 4 decades exploring trauma, healing, and consciousness. From Chinese medicine to Amazonian ceremonies to subtle architecture of forgiveness itself. And what he shares in this conversation is radical in its simplicity. Trauma is not the end of your story. It's an initiation. We talk about the way trauma lives in the nervous system, how the body holds what the mind thinks it has moved past. We explore why screaming it out isn't the same as healing it, why psychedelics can open the door, but love is what walks you through. And perhaps most importantly, we talk about what it means to stop trying to fix the world and instead reclaim peace inside your own body. If you've ever felt like you're the one breaking generational patterns, if you've ever wondered why success doesn't feel like it's enough, if you've ever questioned whether forgiveness is weakness or liberation, stay with us. This conversation just might change the way you see your past and your power. Have you ever noticed your skin reflects your stress? I used to struggle with mine, dry, dull, reactive, until I started pairing nervous system regulation with products that actually honor your body. That's why I love Milk and Butterflies. They handcraft every formula with 100% organic ingredients and powerful aromatherapy oils. They aren't just products for your skin, they're rituals that restore hydration, resilience, and calm even in the busiest seasons of our life. You can try them for yourself and feel the difference. Head to Milk and Butterflies and use my promo code Dr. Kelly for free shipping. That's DRKELLY for free shipping. Also, check out the link in the description for the podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. So honored to have Dr. Richmond. Let me start that over again. Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I'm so honored to have Dr. Richard Grossman on the podcast today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure
Yeah,
is mine.
I'm so looking forward to this. There's so much of what you speak about that I think is really going to hit home for so many people. And where I'd like to start is that you talk about trauma isn't a wall, it's a door, and how it can really open us up to our awakening. Do you mind expanding on that and what that means?
I would be happy to. There's many ways to view life events, and the way that we view the life event determines how that life event affects our lives on every level possible. So if I'm, first of all, I don't know, I haven't met anybody yet who hasn't suffered from some sort of trauma in their life. So I would say that's part of the universal human condition. And as the universal human condition, it's something that each person is going to have to meet in their lives voluntarily or involuntarily at some point. You know, post-traumatic healing is really vital. It starts off with birth. You know, nobody's born into this world easy. Nobody's born into this world without some sort of baggage. And if they don't have any baggage, they acquire the baggage pretty quickly. You know, it used to be they'd hold the baby up by its feet and slap its behind to get it to breathe. Fortunately, I think that's passé now.
Mhm.
But still, you're born, if you're lucky, you're born in a beautiful, safe home birth and water, and you're ushered into this world with no trauma or as little trauma as possible to loving parents who care for you and love you like crazy from the moment you take your first breath and even before that. That's not the majority.
Mhm.
That's sadly not the majority of people. So trauma, can take different forms. Physical trauma is one, and that who has not been injured in their life. Sometimes it's minor, sometimes it's major, but whatever it is, the nervous system responds to it in a way that can be called a somewhat on the like on the continuum of a shock.
Mhm.
Maybe you fall and wow, wow, you're okay. 5 minutes later, it's not that big of a trauma. But there's the accidents that are traumatic that have a lifelong implication.
Mhm.
There's emotional trauma. Who hasn't had their heart broken?
Mhm.
Who
Yeah.
hasn't been deceived? Who hasn't been betrayed? And I know that's like when the first time it happened to me, I was like, well, I'm the only person this has ever happened to.
Mhm.
Nobody else could have gone through this much pain, right?
Yeah.
A friend betrays you. Nobody else has ever been betrayed by a friend. This is the first time in history this has happened,
Mhm.
and poor me, even though I'd seen it on television, read in books a million times, it still hits you so deeply
Mhm.
that this is unique. I'm unique. And everybody is unique. And everybody, the way each person meets this is going to be unique as well.
Mhm.
And there's spiritual trauma as well. We don't talk about that too much, but upbringing in a church or a cult or a religion that is not life respecting, that is not love respecting, that speaks of love as something you have to earn, that comes from outside of you, and you have to earn it by following certain rules and directions. And if you break those rules or directions, you go to hell for eternity.
Mhm.
You
Yeah. Yeah.
know? Young kids hear this.
Mhm. Yeah.
So each one of these things makes an impression upon the soul. We could call it a sanskara,
Mhm.
which is out of the Vedic tradition. And the interesting thing about these sanskaras is, according to Vedic tradition, these carry on from lifetime to lifetime.
Mhm.
And so that's where I said maybe a baby is born pre-traumatized because of what happened to them in previous existences. Is that true or is that not? Nobody knows. Nobody to my knowledge has died and come back, and people can say they had near-death experiences, but note the use of the word near there.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
the same as dying. It's a
Mhm.
near-death experience. So what do we do with this process of kind of like if you're looking at it as a karmic thing, as karma being these injuries that are taken through life that are happened to us or that we do to somebody else
Mhm.
or to others, and who hasn't said something stupid, said something mean, done something to hurt somebody. We're unfortunately or fortunately incredibly human, and that
Mhm.
stuff happens. So as a victim state, we look at this as poor me.
Mhm.
This happened to me. I was abused. I was raped. I was injured. I was betrayed. I had my heart broken. I lost everything, whatever it is. And as long as it's that kind of self-reflexive, looking at yourself as being what's wrong, there's no hope for healing.
Mhm.
Okay, so healing occurs when a human being takes responsibility, which means acknowledging that they are part of this. I was going to say the victim, but I don't want to use that word, but they are part of this movie, part of this play, part of this scene, scenario of their life. And I can hold on to these things and become bitter. So
Mhm.
easy. It's
Mhm.
so easy to
Yeah.
do that. Or I can take the hero's path and learn to face my fear, face my anger, face my betrayals, face my wounds, face my injuries, and come to a place where I find forgiveness.
Mhm.
And to clarify, if somebody injured me, my forgiving them inside of myself does not mean that what they did is okay.
Mhm.
A lot of people make that mistake when they hear forgiveness.
Mhm.
They're still whatever they are,
Mhm.
and that's their karma to deal with that.
Yeah.
But the forgiveness happens inside of myself because in reality, everything in my life is perceived inside of myself. Right. If I have something happen to me from the outside, the place where it's processed and held is here and here and here and here and in the body, in the mind, in the muscles, in the guts. And so the process of forgiveness is learning how to let those things, I like to use this phrase, I should trademark this one. They
Hmm.
return to the unreality, I can say it, they
Hmm.
return to the unreality that they always were.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
if it's being perceived inside of me, it's part of my mental emotional realm, which is in 3D physical reality. It's not real. It's
Hmm.
just neurons
Hmm. Yeah.
or
Powerful.
whatever else, however else. Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Hmm.
So forgiveness is letting go of every possible connection inside of me that I have emotionally, physically, spiritually to these past wounds. And what opens up after that is this state called increasing freedom,
Hmm.
which is where we all want to be. I mean, I don't know anybody who wants to not be
Right.
free, but
Absolutely.
we make the mistake. Freedom is based on my fixing the world
Hmm. Yeah.
instead of fixing myself.
Hmm. Right.
And I learned this when I was in India the first time when I was 18. I was a crazy kid.
Hmm.
And I noticed that people living in relatively horrific situations that I saw, people with poverty level, at one point I realized I had more financial wealth in the clothes that I wore and the watch that I had on, which was not a great watch, than these people had in their entire lives, not to mention what was in my backpack and in my home. So, but they had this shining brightness. Many of them had this shining brightness in their eyes of joy. I asked myself, why?
Hmm.
What's going on here? Why are, these people living on the street have shinier, happier eyes than I did? Damn
Yeah.
good question.
It is a very good question. Yeah. And I think that's something that we all get trapped in. A lot of us get trapped in of like thinking the external world, when it's perfect, then I'll be okay. Or when someone is happy with us, then we'll be okay. Or when that situation's over, we'll be okay. But it ends up being this treadmill that just keeps you going in a loop of feeling like it's never good enough or you're not good enough. And it's such a powerful perspective that you shared of looking at it from this 3D realm versus removing yourself from the situation and seeing it from a greater perspective of what can be gained through some of these trials and tribulations and immense challenges that we go through. And I know I've experienced that in my life. I can be like, in this human realm, this sucks, this is awful. But then when you take yourself away from it and be like, what is there to learn? What is it that I'm missing? What is it that this is here to teach me? And you can see the value in it. It's very powerful.
I want to take a brief moment to pause from the episode to share something that I've noticed so many women struggle with, and maybe this resonates with you, that you do not feel safe to honor your own needs. You might be the one who learned how to be easy, capable, and reliable, and yet you're tired of overriding yourself. You're tired of explaining your no, you're tired of feeling guilty for wanting space, and tired of shrinking your truth to keep the peace. The thing that most people don't realize is that you can't actually protect your peace without a sense of inner safety. And without that safety, boundaries feel harsh, guilt feels unavoidable, and self respect feels like something you're constantly working at instead of resting into. If you have that quiet, steady craving for self respect, the kind that lives in your body, Self Respect Reset was created for you. It's a guided, body based experience designed to help you rebuild inner safety, trust yourself again, and honor your needs without guilt, explanation, or self abandonment. If this speaks to you, you can find the link to join in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
We need to acknowledge that some things really suck, some things
Yeah.
really suck.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's part of life.
Hmm.
You know. Do you know
Yeah.
the term Wetiko?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Wetiko is a fascinating thing, and it kind of reflects into the Buddhist idea of the hungry ghost.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Wetiko spirit comes out of the Algonquin Native American tradition. That's where it originated in that word.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it a spirit. I think it's more of something within a person, but they call it a spirit that is never satisfied, that
Mm-hmm.
wants more and more and more, and is willing to do whatever it takes to get more and more and more, even if it means injuring others. And we see that so much today. You know, in the Buddhist idea, the hungry ghost is the reflection of a person who, in this lifetime, wanted more and more and more. And the more they got, the more they wanted, which is also very similar to the Wetiko idea. Not sure it's Wetiko or Wetiko. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
one of those two words. I've read it, I haven't
Yeah.
heard it. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, the hungry ghost, when a person dies, they become this hungry ghost that is given vast abundance of food to eat,
Mm-hmm.
vast abundance. But their mouth is like this little tiny thing like that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
they cannot satisfy themselves. And, great, this is like after death, blah, blah, spirit, blah, blah. It's real right now.
Mm-hmm.
How many people have reached a certain level of success and want more?
Mm-hmm.
You become a millionaire, not enough. 100 millionaire, not enough. Billionaire, not enough. And now we have people that are, one person who's becoming a trillionaire, and it's not going to be enough
Right.
because that place inside that's trying to be filled can't be filled. It's the wrong medicine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe the right idea to fill up that empty space inside, but it's being filled up with the wrong medicine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no matter
which
how
can
good,
never, never,
right,
never, never.
never be enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's powerful. I think it's something that so many of us can like resonate with, especially if you're on that achieving cycle of thinking that that's going to be the answer. It's almost like you have to sometimes go through that process to realize that there's no, that what you're seeking is never there. And then to realize that you have to pursue something else and go inward. And I want to go back to what you were saying about the trauma because I don't want to brush that over because there's so much to unpack there. And for someone who's listening, who's maybe has gone through some horrific things in their life and really has experienced some really complex trauma, what does it look like for that person to who maybe has been in that story of the trauma for years upon years and it's gotten so wired in them? How do they navigate to a place where they can see it from a different perspective or see it where they can forgive and get to a place of letting it go?
I'm sorry about that.
No
Um,
worry, no, you're fine. I can edit that. No,
okay.
no worries. I'm just making notes, so I'll edit that out. But I'll keep the question. But yeah,
Okay.
whenever you're ready.
Such an important question. Um, the first thing to know about it is it's not going to heal overnight.
Mhm.
And the second thing to know is it may never fully heal. Some things are carried through life. And the third thing to know is that such a thing gives a person compassion or should give a person compassion.
Mhm.
So if I have suffered, I can recognize suffering in another and help them maybe through their suffering. And that turns into a life based on service than a life based on acquiring.
Mhm.
Not that it's wrong to acquire. I'm glad I could afford to get a nice camera for my computer, and have a nice microphone and things like that. But the acquiring of these things is not my goal in life. My goal in life is to serve humans or to serve people, not in the Twilight Zone,
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it's to help people.
Mhm.
And so that simple little shift makes a big difference. And somebody who's been seriously traumatized has to know, like I said, it's going to take a while. And the other thing they have to know is that it is possible to heal it.
Mhm.
And the healing can occur through different means. There's EMDR, there's psychedelic psychotherapy, which I happen to be a big proponent of. There's ayahuasca, which I also happen to be a big proponent of. There's psychotherapy, which I'm not such a big proponent of in general. But there's many ways to start to unwind physical body work. Something like deep tissue massage can really help to unwind these things, to find those places inside where they're being held on, where it's being unconsciously held on. What I mean by that is, let's say, okay, somebody hits me, wham. Um, I tighten up, natural. I go into fight or flight mechanism. I may never relax those muscles that tightened up fully. So those muscles then harden, connective tissue, the fascia builds up there. And I'm held in a position that my unconscious mind, my physical body recognizes as a trauma response. So sometimes going in there and, getting it worked out can be very helpful when it's done with somebody who understands that they're massaging more than the body or they're releasing more than the body. Same thing with psychedelics. People can take ayahuasca or take mushrooms. Those are the main thing, ketamine, iboga. They can take these things and have wild, incredible cosmic experiences while they're more or less bypassing the deeper issues inside that are where their pain is being held. So they have one of these peak experiences and they're flying high for a few days or a few weeks or even a few months, but then at some point they crash because the illness, the disease, the trauma is still locked inside. So unwinding trauma in this way is a very skillful thing that a person can do for somebody else. It's incredibly skillful and not too fast, not too slow, just right. Because doing it too fast is a re-traumatizing effect. It used to be common in psychotherapy, some psychotherapy circles, the primal scream, right? You get to the root core of the pain and you scream it all out like, the neighbors will call the police type of scream if they could hear it. I've seen that happen in ceremonies too, in ayahuasca ceremonies. People emote like crazy. But the problem is they're just emoting. They're trying to get it out. But again, it's the wrong technique because such things have to be loved through.
Yeah.
It isn't like, oh, it's okay, yeah, blah, blah. No, it's like you have to go into the place inside of you that is the source of love inside of your own heart. And forgiveness then becomes the actions, the activity of letting go of those places inside of you that are connected to the trauma, so that the trauma then enters into the realm of the past. Because somebody who's traumatized, their trauma is very much in the present, even though it might have happened a year, 5 years, 20 years, 50 years ago. Their trauma is very much in the present. So in forgiveness, it's releasing those threads, those ties, those stucknesses, and then allowing the river of time to dissolve those images, those scars on the soul into a place where they no longer have power. I won't say they don't exist any longer because sometimes these things are really important to be able to pull up for a story, for an example, for a book, for a lecture, whatever it is. But if the trauma is still present, bringing these things up for a story, whatever it is, will again be a re-traumatizing effect. And you see people who start telling their story and they end up wailing. They haven't healed yet. They haven't let go of it yet. They haven't processed it through yet.
So is an indicator that someone has healed and processed that they can go back to those stories and not feel energetically hooked or emotionally hooked by them. Is there like a neutrality to it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say even more, there's a freedom to it,
Freedom. Yeah.
because each one of those things, we're talking about the doorway idea, each one of those learnings of letting go is the opportunity for learning more about yourself and more about life.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. If I have a trauma and I learn to let it go and love despite it being there,
Hmm.
I've learned how to love despite it being there. What a
Yeah.
great thing that is.
It's no longer conditional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it goes even deeper because if I'm carrying a trauma, I will, in my own life, this is Peter Levine's work, I believe. I will, in my own life, look for ways to re-traumatize myself in the hope of by being re-traumatized, I can learn how to heal that initial trauma. Unfortunately, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. So bringing up those emotions again so that you can have that doorway to go deeper in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. For someone, I know you mentioned generational trauma, for someone who's has like a lineage of patterns that they see come up in their life, they've seen it maybe their parents' life, grandparents' life, for that person who that trauma has been passed down, but maybe it's not their immediate experience that is in that lineage. How do they go back into that when maybe there's no memories or they don't really, they're not, don't have this awareness of what has been passed down through the generations?
Right. So in my work, the story is only incidentally important.
Mhm.
It's not that important to know that my great grandfather was a bank robber who shot
Mhm.
somebody. He wasn't, by the way.
Right.
I don't think he
Yeah.
was anyway. I never
Right.
met him, but
Hasn't been uncovered.
it's not it's not that important to know that part of the story. It's great if you're writing a book, by the way, but
Yeah.
otherwise it's not that important. What's important is that inside of me, there's going to be a place where that trauma is being carried as a tightness,
Mm.
as an impression. And so by working on that inside of me, let me tell you a story. This
Mhm.
was really powerful. Many years ago, I was working with a friend, doing some medicine work with her, and we decided to do an ayahuasca ceremony one night. And it was really, really strong.
Mhm.
I'm one of the people that kind of believes not too strong is better, like this is really strong. And I started to panic, which was completely unusual for me. I've been working with medicine work for many years, and I thought I dealt with everything.
Mhm.
And I was like standing up, sitting down, walking outside, walking inside, totally nervous, and I felt like I was really dying.
Mhm.
And my friend, who was brilliant, is a brilliant healer, looked at me and said, "Tell me about your ancestors." And like 3D vision of my grandmother as a young child hiding under the bed in a shtetl in Poland, in a village in Poland where the Cossacks or somebody was doing a pogrom in their village. And she was hiding because if she didn't hide, she would end up being dead. And, I felt her fear. I really felt it. I felt her terror. And I did confirm this as being a reality later. Um, So as I'm going through this process in myself of letting it go inside of myself, of forgiving her, forgiving the Cossacks, forgiving the anti-Semites, forgiving the entire panoply of things that were happening there by letting it dissolve into the past. Again, not making it right or not making it okay. It wasn't. Never will be, never could be. But by letting it dissolve inside of myself, I felt her spirit healing.
Wow.
I felt, real or not, God knows, but I felt her spirit healing. I felt her spirit letting go of that trauma that she went through that she'd never had the chance to process through in her life because when she was alive, the tools for this didn't exist. We're so fortunate right now that all of these tools exist. We're so fortunate. And that's why, getting back to this lineage thing, it's why I think we could be in that moment of reality where the buck can stop here. We don't have to carry this stuff into the future through the coming generations.
Mhm.
At least we can give them a head start
Mhm.
by doing our own healing work.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's almost like you look
finding
at,
meaning, yeah, finding meaning in the
yeah.
moment, finding meaning in ourselves, finding meaning in the love that's inside
Mhm.
of the heart,
Yeah.
instead of trying to fill it up with things that are on the outside.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you
Tough.
can look at the world and see like there's so much turmoil and chaos, but I've felt so many spiritual gurus that talk about this as the big spiritual awakening, that things are pulling things up so that we can heal this and really stop some of this trauma from carrying on to the next generation. And
Yes.
for so many, for the person who feels like they're the one who is the cycle breaker in their family, and they're the ones who are finally feeling the emotions of releasing them, forgiving them, going through all that work, but yet looking at their outside circumstances and maybe they're losing friends, losing family members. There's a lot of turmoil in their relationships, but yet they feel very anchored in themselves. What can you say to that person who is doing the work, releasing that, feeling like they're finally living their truth, they're finally feeling peace, but yet they're looking at their outside world and they see it almost like disintegrating around them?
Keep going for the peace inside.
Hmm.
Keep going for the peace inside. There's no guarantees the world is going to become sane.
Hmm.
There's just
Yeah.
no guarantees of that. I would say that the chances of it are fairly slim. I would not bet money on it. I wouldn't go to a
Hmm.
bookie,
Yeah.
you know. But
Yeah.
peace inside is something that can be grown.
Hmm.
And according to metaphysical teachings, if enough people start feeling the peace inside, it'll start to percolate out into the rest of the world.
Hmm.
Whether that'll happen or not, who knows? But it is a worthy experiment to try because feeling the peace within is certainly worth everything.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't change the circumstances of my family. I can't change the circumstances of my past. I can't change the circumstances of this world. I've tried. I'm not very
Hmm.
good at it, but I
Yeah.
can't. But I can change the circumstances of myself.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the place where I hold my power. That's the place where I hold my reality. That's the place where I hold my truth. And, it might look like life could be lonely. Loneliness is a signal that it's okay to go deeper, to find, the cliche about you're never alone.
Hmm.
You're never really alone. And if I find that I'm always with myself and the experiencing of myself with the capital S self is in and of itself fulfilling, in and of itself peace, in and of itself beautiful. Maybe at times in my life, that's the most I can do.
Hmm.
And maybe by my changing that perspective, the energy that I put into the world is going to be more peaceful, more loving, more beautiful, and more transformative for not only myself, but for the people that I meet, the people that I interact with.
Hmm.
So worthy experiment,
Hmm.
worthy experiment.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so powerful and it's also empowering because you realize like don't waste your energy on trying to change the things outside yourself. It's putting it back into yourself, and then that inevitably then changes the mirror from which is seen through your inner worlds. But for someone that is going through that, I find that like a common trap is that they're misunderstood, or they feel like this need to explain things, or they feel almost drawn into trying to get people to understand their perspective. I'd love to hear your perspective on that and your experience with that when you are going inward, living your truth and putting the work in. How do you navigate when you're being misunderstood by others who maybe are not at that level of consciousness to understand it?
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Hmm.
Um, my main navigation tool is to not lose myself in the process. And
Hmm.
if I do, to do whatever I can to get back to myself,
Hmm.
to get back to feeling my heart, to get back to being in love, to get back to being solid and stable and integral.
Hmm.
Um, to a certain extent, there was a book, I never read the book, but I love the title. It was What You Think of Me Is None of My Business.
I've heard that. I
You
haven't
know,
read it either, but I love the title too. Yeah.
I've gotten more from titles of books. Some of these books I've gotten from the entire book
Yeah.
itself, you
Yeah,
know.
right?
So to know, the AI thing, what can I change? What can't I change?
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for what somebody else feels about me. I mean, if I slug them in the face, I am, but
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
they're judging me, if they're coming from a place of judgmentalism and their own darkness and perceiving me through the lenses of their trauma and their wounds,
Mhm.
it's not my problem.
Mhm.
I mean, that might sound a little bit cruel, and it's not cruel because I will be there for them as much as I can be. But I don't really, on an individual level, I don't have the right to let somebody else take away my experience of joy.
Mhm.
Story I heard, um, there were, in World War II, there were sects of Hasids, of mystical Jews who, when they were being led to the gas chambers, would get in a circle and dance and sing and pray
Mhm.
because they wouldn't even let that take away their joy. If
Yeah.
they could do it, we could do it. If somebody can do it, anybody can do it.
Mhm.
And to have that much commitment to joy,
Yeah.
to beauty, that even in the most horrific of situations, I can,
Mhm.
I can
Yeah.
still experience joy. I may
Mhm.
not, but I can,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and if I can, that part of, again, trauma being a portal is if I can and if I do, I have grown.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have become a better human being because of doing that.
Mhm. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
powerful. It reminds me of a story I heard very similar to that. I think it was on a podcast or something. It was saying very similar of there's this woman who her family was all killed during World War II, and they asked her to dance. The like Nazis asked her to dance right after she watched her whole family get killed, and she went there and danced, and she shares her story of like they can't the same way you were saying they can't take my joy. Like I'm here and I'm living my life and I'm gonna be in my power now. And it's just like so I'm not doing it justice because it was just so profound hearing it from her words, but like the power of that of like to be able to live like that. And if someone who not awful of a situation can live like that, then we all have the power to change the meaning that we give to circumstances. And it's so incredibly powerful. And I want to go into I know you wrote a book and I would love for you just to kind of share that, your book is Trust and Forgive. Can you talk about that? Because forgiveness, I know we've touched on, and then also trust. These are things that we can sometimes maybe cognitively understand that, but to embody it and feel like we're living that. I would love to hear your perspective on that. How do we move from understanding those concepts to actually feeling like we are living them and integrating them into our lives?
Yeah, I wrote the book based on my own healing journey
Mhm.
and based on my perceptions of the world and where humanity has made wrong turns and gone in wrong directions, and how the process of trust and forgiveness is transformative at the deepest levels and allows a person to, as we've been talking about, to not only forgive the past, but to trust the whole process of life itself.
Mhm.
So it was based, the origin of it came during my first ayahuasca ceremony many years ago, where, I drank this medicine. I was not a group, it was with a friend of mine who brought some up from Peru and, only faintly knew what he was doing. I
Mhm.
studied a little bit down there, but So it was incredibly powerful. And oh wow, I'm just enjoying the light show and the patterns and the sacred geometry and the stars and galaxies and beauty. And then like, bam, I was in a Nazi concentration camp.
Mm.
And I was observing it. I was in it. And it was cold, gray, snowy, wet, horrible smells. Everything was bad. And I was like, wait a second, I want the colors again. Give me the
Mm.
sacred geometry. And I was like, nope, this is where you are. And I'm not enjoying it in the least.
Mhm.
I'm not freaking out. It's not a bad experience. It's weird, but it's not
Mhm.
bad. I wasn't like, get me out of here, it wasn't like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I'm
Yeah.
observing it, I'm in it, I'm feeling it, but I want out.
Mhm.
And so it's like, well, maybe if I think about Buddha, I'll get out. Maybe if I think about, a mountain, I'll get out. Maybe I think about the ocean and a sunset, I'll get out. None of those things helped at all.
Mhm.
And so finally I like asked something, I'm not going to label it,
Mhm.
but I said, what do I need to do to get out of here, to change this? And the words trust and forgive came up.
Mhm.
And I was like, screw you,
Yeah.
forget it. I'm supposed to forgive this.
Mhm.
No, tell me how I get out of here. Trust and forgive. Trust and forgive. Over and over again, trust and forgive.
Mhm.
And finally, I had the intelligence to say, how do I do that? I can't. I can't forgive Nazis. I can't forgive war. I can't forgive suffering. I can't forgive the pain that occurred in this place. What do I do? And so the basic idea came in, which we've been talking about, is let the winds of time wash the past into the non-existence that it already is.
Mhm.
That doesn't exist anymore. It existed, no longer exists, but it existed inside of me during that
Mhm.
experience. So the place I could let it also join the winds of time, be washed away by time, was inside of myself.
Mhm.
And so it was like, okay, I think I can do this.
Mhm.
And I just started like forgiving and letting go. Not, again, not okay, right? But
Mhm.
forgiving and letting go, and felt this deep angst inside of me that had been with me my entire life releasing. Not dramatically. It was like just gentle, like kind of if you're cutting a rope and the little pieces are going blang, 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 like in a movie or something. Just, oh, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. Until my emotional connection to that experience that I was having in that moment was no longer there. I'd forgiven it, I'd let it go, I'd released it.
Mhm.
And as soon as I did that, of course, something else came up that I had to trust and forgive, and then something
Mhm.
else. And it was this long journey through time that I really dealt with in my upcoming book, which is a novel that was, again, based loosely on some of these experiences I've had.
Mhm.
Um, of letting go of everything that I could in that moment. And in a way, healing those aspects of myself that were from those time periods. I'm not going to say past life. I'm going to say those impressions were inside of me. We can call it the, universal unconscious mind, but they were inside of me. They weren't in the bottle of medicine, right?
Mhm.
They were inside of me. So as I let each one of these things go, I became lighter and lighter, and more in my body, more and more in my breath, more and more in my heart,
Mhm.
until that experience was finished.
Mhm.
So with trust and forgive, the medicine of your life, I took those experiences, those and many other experiences I had, of learning essentially how to be me.
Mhm. Yeah.
which also translate, and anybody who reads it is going to learn how to be them more,
Hmm. Yeah.
and in a way that I think is interesting and fun, and sometimes a little bit strange. And there's some short stories in it that I just wrote for fiction, and there's some other wild experiences I've had doing medicine work and out of my life. So
Yeah.
people
Powerful.
who read it, people who read it are transformed by it.
Hmm. Yeah. It's amazing. And in that moment, you talking about that, like trust and forgiveness, if someone's like struggle with that, like when you're in that place and you're letting go, are you visualizing things letting go? Like what does that look like? What is that experience of like letting it go? Like if you could just put it into words. I know sometimes it's hard to like put into words, but if you could put it into words, what does it feel like to like let it go, to forgive, to let things release?
That is so hard to put into words.
Yeah.
Grab my trusty little tripod here.
Hmm.
So imagine this is something that I don't want. I really hate this aspect of myself.
Hmm.
I don't want it anymore. Could you please take it away?
Hmm.
Okay, I'll take it away.
Mm.
Take it away. Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
To gripping.
I'm not letting go.
Hmm.
And so this process is internally this.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
internally like, because we all know what it is to hold on to something,
Hmm.
and we all know we can do it with our bodies, but we also do it with our mind and with our physical internal body. So it is, like if I'm sitting in meditation and something comes up, I do not want to engage with it as a
Hmm.
battle. That's been
Hmm.
tried. We know
Yeah.
it doesn't work. We have like 30,000 years of human experience, at
Hmm.
least, knowing that that doesn't work, probably 200,000 years, but we know that that doesn't work. So, what is it then when inside of myself, when I'm coming up against one of these wounds or fears or traumas or whatever, if I can just sit and be in my center and without attaching to the storyline, because the story perpetuates it. Okay, but if I could just feel what it is inside of me, those places that I'm holding on to, I'm not saying this is easy, by the way, but if I
Hmm.
can feel those places inside of me where I'm holding on and gently allow those to be released, to release, there's no real way I could put words to it, but it is like, it is both this and it
Hmm.
is the rose opening up by itself.
Hmm.
I can't help the rose open up. I
Hmm.
think there's one flower you can help open up, maybe a lily of
Yeah.
some sort, but you try to help a rose open up by peeling away, you'll kill it.
Yeah.
But if you allow it to open up, if I allow these places inside of me that are tight to open up, then I'm affecting a healing on the deepest levels.
Hmm.
I don't need to understand it.
Hmm.
I think, understanding is kind of the consolation prize a lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
If I want to understand it, I can understand it. But if I don't need to understand it, to let it go.
Hmm.
So it looks like the process, and it may be a lifelong process. I don't
Hmm.
know, because it seems like whenever one layer gets healed, another layer pops up to be healed,
Hmm.
but it gets easier.
Hmm.
And so, um, working with breath, working with consciousness, the plant medicines are certainly incredible, can be incredibly valuable for this.
Hmm.
Um, but it's the process of the willingness to come into the present moment fully and not carry the baggage of the past.
Hmm. Yeah.
because each one of us, I think each person has a backpack on, an
Hmm.
invisible backpack, and we put bricks in it. It's like, oh,
Absolutely.
there's a brick. I'll put it in
Hmm.
there. I'll put it in there. I'll put it in there. And if you've ever, long distance backpacked,
Hmm.
at a certain point, you get pretty strong and you get really good at it. And you might even forget you have a backpack on.
Hmm.
But then when you get to the campsite or the, hostel or whatever it is, and you take it off, it's like, whoa, you
Yeah.
float. You feel like you're floating. Feels
Don't
so
like how
good.
much you got. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it may not be that we get to take the whole backpack off all at once.
Hmm.
We have to like realize that it's there and take one brick out at a time.
Hmm.
But each time a brick is taken out, it's beneficial.
Yeah.
And, to recognize that some of those bricks may be really carefully nurtured parts of our
Hmm.
personality, identity, let's say, not personality.
Hmm.
If I'm identified as being a traumatized person, that trauma becomes a part of my identity. And who would I be without that?
Yeah.
And that may be where a person needs professional help,
Hmm.
to rebuild their being around
Hmm.
healthfulness,
Yeah.
and freedom instead of around being trapped by their own carefully nurtured, carefully, put in the closet in a box with a label on it and a date, and it's there forever because it's
Hmm.
part of the memories that make a person who they are. Even though, spiders and mice and rats are living up there now and it really
Hmm.
smells bad and blah, who wants it?
Hmm. Right.
You know, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much for that visual because I think it's really helpful just for someone who maybe is struggling with it, is like white knuckling it, like how they can start to let that go. And really appreciate you sharing that. And one thing I know you touched on a few times, and I just want to like go a little bit deeper, or just even just to reiterate this, because when we forgive, again, it doesn't mean that we're condoning the behavior or allowing that person back in our life. And I would love for you to just share your perspective on that and go a little bit deeper into that, of like forgiving, but also protecting ourselves from maybe something like someone or something that is harmful to us.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's that thing we touched on earlier is that if I'm carrying a trauma, I may be looking for other traumas to give that trauma justification or to try to heal that trauma.
Mhm.
So that's one of the big reasons for healing and releasing and trusting and forgiving through these past traumas, because who wants to be repeating them? And Peter Levine saw that somebody who maybe had a childhood injury on their right side would over and over again injure their right side going into adulthood because they're still trying to like process through the pain they felt as a child. So, letting these things go is so important. Um, Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah. So how do we forgive, but also not condone or
Oh,
allow
yeah, yeah,
back
yeah.
in our lives? Like, do we have, to give ourselves permission to protect ourselves and be able to let go of the energetic cords that are there as well?
Yeah. The energetic cords are inside of you,
Mhm.
for
And yeah.
one.
Hmm.
And so you're the master of your internal world, or you should be. Everybody should be the master of their internal world. We're not often, but we should be, or
Hmm.
we can be,
Yeah.
you know. So if I release something or somebody, that connection inside of me no longer exists, ideally.
Hmm.
There's these things can get very sticky, as I'm sure you know.
Hmm.
But as we release more and more of the stickiness, the connection to that external person becomes more and more easy to get rid of,
Hmm.
if that's what's appropriate. Nobody should ever allow anybody in their life who's abusive. But how many people do
Hmm.
over and over and over and over and over again?
Hmm.
Because in that abusive person, they're trying to heal something inside of themselves that has not yet healed. So if I heal that within inside of myself, then getting rid of somebody who is not going to change, who doesn't want to change, who may say they want to change but doesn't really want to change. They may be manipulative or narcissistic or whatever it is. It makes it easier to see them as they are and to get them out of the life. I think it's important to do that. Nobody should have anybody in their life who's not benefiting their life. And that gets a little bit tricky because sometimes it's, a family.
Mhm. Right.
But that's where, healing it on the inside is important because they need not affect you. They
Mhm.
need not get to you. And, how to tell us something hasn't been healed is if it still gets to you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. If still triggering, there's still something that to
It's
go
still
deeper on.
triggering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that explanation because I think that is something that does get lost in the mix of like a lot of times it's misinterpreted that forgiving is just letting it go and letting the person back in your life. But there is a difference, distinct difference that forgiveness is within you and it's not condoning people's behaviors. So I think that's such
Well,
a
never,
powerful message.
never,
Hmm.
never, never, ever, ever, ever let somebody back into your life that's abusive.
Hmm.
Never, ever. You don't deserve it. Nobody deserves that.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's perfectly ethically correct to do that.
Hmm. Right.
Doesn't mean you're a bad person or a mean person or cruel, even though if they may be saying you're mean and you're cruel and you're bad, that's part of the manipulative thing that people do.
Right.
But there's no reason at all, ethically, morally, to allow that to happen.
Hmm. Yeah.
And in Aikido, the person who started Aikido, Sheba, um, said, "What if somebody's trying to harm you? What if they want to kill you?"
Hmm.
And in Aikido, he said, "Bring them into you and then kill them with love.
Hmm.
Kill them while feeling love. Doesn't mean you kill them. Love is not going to kill them, but you kill them because nobody has a right to harm you.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying anybody should kill anybody else, by the way, but this was during war that he developed that. So, but to have love in your heart, I can love somebody and say, I do not want you in my life. You've been edited out of my life. I never want to see you again.
Hmm.
That's perfectly ethical.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, because I think that's something that I think many people who maybe are in those situations need to hear, and just to validate that you can experience both forgiveness and love and also protect yourself and that they're not mutually exclusive. So I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and experience with that. And for someone who's listening who wants to dive deeper and really connect with you, where can they find you?
www.heartfeather.com. Heartfeather.com. Heartfeather came out of the Egyptian tradition that when a person dies, I think it's Osiris takes their heart out and puts it on a scale,
Mm,
and Ma'at holds the scale. And on one side of the scale is their heart, on the other side is a feather. And if the heart weighs more than the feather, the person doesn't get to go into heaven.
mm,
And if the feather, no, yeah, if the heart weighs more, if the feather is more real than the heart, if the heart is so light and free, then the person is allowed into heaven.
I love it. I have
And
not heard that before. Yeah.
a beautiful idea, and the time, as Kabir said, the time to know this stuff, the time to heal this stuff is now. It's not after you die.
Mhm.
This is the perfect indication that don't wait until you die, because now is the opportunity to heal these things, to heal these wounds, to let go of the past, to transform, to find love inside, and to know who you really are.
Mhm. Absolutely. You can bring heaven to here and live that today, even with the physical body. So thank you so much. This has been so powerful. I know there's going to be so many messages that people can take and really embody and live their life with a newfound freedom and start to at least approach it from a different perspective, see it from a different perspective and allow themselves to heal. So I'm so grateful for everything you shared today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with your listeners and your watchers, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, definitely connect with Dr. Richard Grossman. I will leave all the links down below, so definitely connect with him. And thank you so much for everybody who tuned in today and share this episode if you found value in it with someone who could also find value in it. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. If something in this episode stirred your truth, reminded you of your worth, or helped you see your patterns with more compassion, you're already rewiring your life. Remember, you don't have to earn your place, overgive to be valued, or shrink to keep the peace. You get to honor your voice, you get to protect your energy, you get to live aligned with who you really are. If you're ready to go deeper, explore more tools, or join a community of women walking this same path, head over to drkellykessler.com. Everything you need to continue this journey is waiting for you. Until next time, take a deep breath, trust yourself, and keep choosing the version of you who feels like home.